Okay, so on the warm-up, at the bottom section, actually I have the answers. You can check your answers. Make sure that you have the same answers. Then we'll talk about the bottom section. So in the top section, every single factor should be a binomial square. Each one of those is a perfect square trinomial. That's the vocabulary. Perfect square trinomial. Each of these should be a binomial squared. And that sign, the x minus 9 or the x plus 3, where's that sign coming from in the original question? In front of the b value, right. So in front of that 18, or in front of that 6, or in front of the 4, that's how I know what sign to equal. In the bottom section, you had to find the c value, and then you also had to factor it. Yes? I have no idea. I must have been talking about something in the last class. All right, questions on these? Then the bottom section, how did you figure out the c value? You should have been able to tell by the time that you did 10 of them that this c value comes from the b value, right? We take the b value, and do what to it? I take this 10, I'm going to divide by 2 because in those factors, the two factors have the middle number divided by 2. It happens twice, right? So we're going to divide that middle number by 2, and then after that, then we square it to find the c. So I just kind of wrote down what I saw around the room. I saw people write out b divided by 2. I saw symbols, b divided by 2, b over 2 squared. When we factor it, it's x plus the b over 2. And then that whole thing squared. So if you want to add in anything more to the bottom while you're sitting here, that would be great so that you have it to refer to when we do today's lesson. So for understanding factoring, today's lesson should be pretty easy. Right? Also, you've done this lesson in geometry, I know you have, and you did this lesson in Algebra 1. So you've seen it multiple times. All right. You guys got your notes? Did everybody get their notes? When I passed them out, did everybody get their notes? Everybody got their notes?
Yes.
All right, on example 1, we're going to solve x squared minus 16x plus 64 equals 100 using square roots. In order to solve it using square roots, we have to have something that is a perfect square. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to factor x squared minus 16x plus 64, set that answer equal to 100. Factor it. Factor the thing we just did on that other paper. Okay, correction. Factor it. Okay, so set it equal to 100. Okay, we are factoring this, and we're going to solve it by square root. You are sitting in partners so that you can check your answers with your partner along with me on the board. All right, so we should have x minus 8 squared. That's what we were supposed to do. This is all we were supposed to do so far. That's all we were supposed to do. I'm not done yet. So we factored it. After we factor it, you notice how we have a perfect square right here. Perfect square. See, that is something squared. So to undo squared, we square root. So I'm going to go ahead and square root both sides. But if I square root, I also have to have what, Sandra? What do I need?
Plus minus.
Thanks. Plus minus. So now I have x minus 8 equals plus minus, and do we know the square root of 100? 10. Okay, from here, we're now going to move the 8 over by, adding 8. So I have x equals, I'm going to put that 8 in front, plus minus 10. Can I add 8 and 10 together? That's something I can do. Okay, so then I probably should do that. I'm going to separate. There are two answers here. One of them is 8 minus 10, and the other one is 8 plus 10. It doesn't matter which one you write first. I just put the minus first. Usually it ends up being the first one in our answer, but it doesn't matter. You can put plus first. You just have to have one of each, and that equals a -2 or an 18. So we've already learned how to solve by square roots. We are just factoring it first, then we solve by square roots. So we're combining two things we've already learned. And just as a reminder, what is -2 and 18 if we graphed it? What are those? Somebody's talking. Oh, Casey? They're the x-intercepts. So on the graph, if I were to graph this parabola, at -2, and at positive 18, the parabola would be passing through the x-axis. Okay, so you have three. You try. So same thing we just did. You try. And we'll walk around and check your answers as you go. And I'm going to put this one on the video just in case somebody is absent and looking at it. So we factored this side and we got x minus 3 squared equals 1. And then we're going to square root both sides. So we get x minus 3 equals plus or minus. And then what is the square root of 1? 1. So we're going to add the 3. I see some people occasionally skipping steps, and when you skip steps, you're leaving yourself open for making silly mistakes. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to do 3 minus 1, and I'm going to do 3 plus 1 to get my two answers. So make sure you're writing out your work. We have the answers of 2 or 4. Notice how I put them in numeric order, and I put the squiggly brackets around it. Okay? And then we have the other one. You guys did that fine. Now we're going to go into completing the square, which you guys have done in geometry, and you've also done in algebra 1. Anybody? If you're double blocking in geometry, you'll do it later in the year, but you should have done it in algebra 1. This is a description, this is a visual for how to do it. I'm just going to walk you through the steps and write some notes, and then you can refer back to this if you need to look at it later. So the first step of completing the square, you have to know how to find the value of c, which we've already gone over today. So take a moment. Find the value of c that makes x squared plus 14x plus c a perfect square trinomial, then factor it. We've already done this today. We just did it as our work. Haley, can you walk me through the steps?
Yes.
Okay. What am I to do?
So I divided 14 by 2.
So she's taking the middle term, which we call b, 14, and divided by 2.
And then I multiplied, well, I didn't multiply it, but I multiplied it by itself.
Mm-hmm. So I can go ahead and do this and write squared?
Yeah.
All right, so what's 14 divided by 2?
7.
Squared is 49. So our C value is 49. Thank you. That's very helpful. And then when we go to factor it, Allison, can you walk me through factoring it?
I don't know how to describe it. I got the answer to something.
So tell me what you did first.
Well, I saw that b was positive, so I knew that it had to be x plus something.
Okay, so you knew that was an x, you knew that was plus.
And then 49, 7 squared equals 49.
Okay, so we're using that number, that 14 divided by 2, we're using that number to go here. And then square. Right? Excellent. So that's 3 more examples. Try those real fast if you haven't tried those. Actually, yeah, real fast. On question 6, you take your b value, your -9, you divide it by 2, and does that go evenly? No. So we end up with a fraction or a decimal, and I don't have a preference which way you write it. Most of us wrote 4.5. So when we square that, we get our C value of 20.25. So when you factor it, you get x, and it's minus 4.5 squared. It's okay to have decimal. All right? Okay, finally we're going to do the entire process of completing the square. So what we've just done, all the pieces come together for doing something called completing the square. So I'm going to go through all the steps. I would encourage you to write down. If I write it down, you write it down too. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is we're going to move the constant to the other side. The constant is the number that does not have any variables. The constant is the number that does not have any variables. So my equation right now is x squared minus 10x plus 7 equals 0. What am I moving over to the other side? The C value, right. The constant. C stands for constant. And when I rewrite what I have, I'm purposely leaving a space. It is on purpose. So what we're going to do now is we are going to complete the square. We're going to find the C value that makes this equation a perfect square. We're going to complete the square. And since it's called complete the square, I always write a square where I am completing the square. But I just put it on both sides of the equation. Why did I put 2 squares in? I'm completing the square on this side of the equation. Why did I put it on the other side? Who remembers? Carly, I can't hear you. Yeah. Right, it's an equation, so if you do it to one side, you have to do it to the other side also, so you got to put the square on both sides. So what am I putting in for C? I'm going to do negative 10, divide by 2, then square that answer. What goes in here? 25. 25. So I put 25 over here. I have to add it to the other side also. Otherwise, it won't be equal anymore. So what we just did there was called complete the square. And that was by doing b divided by 2 squared. Oh my gosh. I think the marker needs batteries. I'm not quite sure. Struggling today. Our next step is to factor the perfect square. So where I had x squared minus 10x plus 25, that's now a perfect square that I created. So we're going to factor it. It becomes x minus 5 squared. So the same stuff we've already done today a couple times. Over on this side, just adding negative 7 and 25 together. 18. We are still solving to find x. So this should look like something else we've done today. Right, exactly, thank you. We're now going to square root and remember we need a plus minus when we square root. And solve for x. So we're just going to finish it out from here. We're going to square root both sides and put in our plus minus. So x minus 5 equals plus minus square root of 18. Is the square root of 18 a perfect square? Does the square root of 18 have a perfect square in it?
Yes.
So we're going to simplify the square root of 18 by pulling out any perfect squares it has. What perfect square is in 18? 9. We have not isolated x yet. It's not by itself, so what should I do? Add 5 to both sides. Can I add 5 with 3 radical 2? 3 radical 2 is not 3, is 3 radical 2. This whole thing stays together. Can I add a 5 with something that is a radical? The answer is no. So if you have a radical left in it, you cannot add these together. So you could write your answers like x equals 5 plus 3 radical 2, or x equals 5 minus 3 radical 2, or you could write your answers just with the fancy brackets and have both of them in it, which is what I prefer. This way right here. But you could also write both of them separate if you feel like you're there. Okay? So I'm going to zoom out these notes and leave them up here just in case you've missed a step. And I'm going to have you go and do number, I forget what number it is, 8 in the bottom there. We're going to go do number 8. Okay, so for number 8, you guys just worked this out, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time explaining it. I'm just going to go through the steps. So we're going to move that 5 over, and then we're going to complete the square by doing 8 over 2 squared, which is 16. We're going to factor this side, x plus 4 squared, and then that side's 21. square root, plus minus. So I got x plus 4 equals plus minus 21, and you guys have explained to me 21 is not going to break down because it's only divisible by 3 and 7. Neither of those are perfect squares. So we're just going to move our 4 over. Negative 4 plus minus square root 21. Answer. All right. Look at number 7. We're going to do that one together. Number 7. First thing we're going to do is subtract the 8. Move the 8 over. And then I'm going to complete the square. We're going to complete the square by doing negative 4 divided by 2 squared. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Squared is 4. And then we factor it. X minus 2 squared equals negative 4. And what's next? Do you know? Square root, both sides, but what? Yay! Yeah, so when you guys go to do your square root, and this will happen over and over again, you'll see it. When you go to do your square root, this one has a negative underneath. So we're going to have a plus minus 2 with that imaginary number I. And that's going back to lesson 3.2 that we had done before exam. And we reviewed yesterday. And then from there, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Can I add together a real number with an imaginary number? No. So I can't do anything else. These are my 2 answers. I'm just going to put them in the brackets. Do you know what that would look like on the graph if these were the x-intercepts? Right. It would this one be above it or below it? You know? Well, what's the A value? It's opening up, so this would have to be above. All right, this would be a graph where you graph it on your calculator. It doesn't actually have x-intercepts. We can solve to find what makes makes this equation 0, but graphically it doesn't have x-intercepts because they're imaginary. Are we doing okay? You're just like, give me harder stuff, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Example 4, ready? Example 4, same kind of thing, we got one extra step. This one has an extra step because the A value is not 1. This A value right here is not 1. So you're going to have extra steps for this kind. We're going to start out the same way. We're going to move the 15 over. We're going to move that constant, that C value, to the other side. We're going to start out the same way. Start out that same way. So remove the constant. After we remove the constant, we have an extra step. We have to factor out the A value. We have to factor out the A value. That's using the distributive property, the undistributed property. We have to factor out the A value. It's going to look like this. 3 parentheses. When we factor it out, we get x squared. Plus, if I factor out a 3 from 12, I get 4x. Leave a space, equal sign, minus 15. Why did I leave a space? You know what? It's okay if you don't. I'll show you. But So what we did is we reviewed factoring last chapter. We're just taking out the 3 from both of those. The 15 did not get affected because we moved it to the other side. The reason why I left a space is now we're going to do complete the square inside the parentheses. So we're going to do 4 divided by 2 squared. We're using this new b value. So 4 divided by 2 squared is 4. This is where I gotta pay attention. So make sure everybody's caught up before I go on. For real. This is where you gotta pay attention. You ready? I'm not putting 4 on in the other box. So that 4 that I put in there is currently inside of a parenthesis that has a 3 multiplied by it. So when I look at what value I added to the left side, it's really 3 times 4 that I put on the left side. So when I go to put it on the other side, I have to do 3 times what's in that box, 4, which is 12. Otherwise, you're going to get it wrong. We don't want to get it wrong. Not for something silly like that. So if you need to draw those arrows, make sure you have them. Now we're going to factor. We're going to go back to what we were doing before. So this item had 3 parentheses, x plus 2 squared equals, on the other side, add those together, -3. And after we factor it, what did we do before? Square root. Except for I got this number in front. So I'm going to divide by 3 first, then I'll do the square root. So divide both sides by 3. So I have x plus 2 squared equals -1. Now I'll do my square root with the plus minus. Jacob, Brownlee. What's the square root of -1? Perfect. I. So we subtract our 2 from both sides. Can I add the 2 and the I together? No. So I'm going to leave them separate, and then those are my answers. Okay, when you have that one done, at the bottom, number 10 is the one that I want you to try next. Number 10. Number 10 at the bottom. You are trying. Number 10. I will zoom this out so you see all my work while you were working on yours. Number 10. I'll be around to check and help you out. Okay, after we do this example, if you have more questions about those ones we were just working on, you can certainly ask me. You can ask me while we work on our assignment too. This last one, we're now going to take an equation that is in standard form, and we're going to write it in vertex form. So vertex forms, going back to chapter 2, vertex form in chapter 2, that was that form that gave us the vertex with transformation, the H and the K. You see where the vertex form is? I highlighted it in your direction. We're going to take this equation in standard form and change it into vertex form. Then we are also going to write the vertex. We're going to do this using complete the square. So I'm going to move the 18 over, but there is a y here this time. That's okay. Nope, we're not making it 0. We're leaving it y. We would make it 0 if we were solving for the x-intercepts, but we're not doing that. We are writing this in vertex form, but the work is the same as the complete the square. So I'm going to write y minus 18, I'm going to leave a space, equals x squared minus 12x, and then I left a space. I left a space because we're going to do complete the square. It's on the right side instead of the left. It's okay. If you need to switch sides, that's fine. But over here, I'm going to take my b value, negative 12, divide it by 2 and square it. 36, right? So that means over here, what am I putting in there? Do I have to multiply it by anything? Not for this one. So I get y, and then I'm going to add together negative 18 plus 36 plus 18 equals, and then on the other side, I'm going to factor it. X minus 6 squared. Same stuff we've been doing. Same stuff. To put this in vertex form, I have to have y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 18. You cannot subtract 18 inside of the parentheses. You just write it after the parentheses. So if I were going to graph this by hand, where would the vertex be located? At positive 6, negative 18. Remember, if it's in the parenthesis, it's opposite. So that says minus 6. Here, I write plus 6. But if it's outside the parenthesis, it's the same. So you write it in vertex form, then you write your vertex. 3 examples you guys try? On your paper? Okay.